Hey there, folks. Chris McLean back with another episode. And in the studio today, I have Nick Deck from Heroes of Marketing. They're a B2B tech-focused agency that's an absolute systems and processes gem. And Nick is all about systems, delegation, deferment, all that good stuff. And we're going to get deep into all of that today. Nick, thanks so much for swinging by.
Absolutely, Chris. Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for jumping on the show, and I'm excited to get into all things delegation and systems. So take us back to Heroes of Marketing. How did this come about? Have you always sort of been in the space? Is this something that came out of something you were doing previously, or did you kind of just fall into the space? Take us through the history of how this came about for you.
Yeah, man, that's a good question. So I've been in the agency world, or I've been marketing for a decade plus, been in and out of other agencies, and it was time to do our own thing. So a few years back, we broke out. My wife and I. My wife's my business partner. She does all the gritty stuff that I don't necessarily like to do. The HR, accounting, all the less fun stuff. But yeah, we decided it was time to do something on our own, and we always had modest aspirations. To be honest, we're not like, you see a lot of internet marketers talking about 7-8 figure aspirations, and we didn't have that, but things went really well in the beginning. We niched down and had a really clear and focused offer for a really specific group of people, and our business took off. We went from 2 to 26 people in about the span of just over a year. So it was we broke a lot of shit. It sucked in a lot of ways, but we learned a lot along the way, and honestly, we persevered. We survived, and it's translated into some really good outcomes on the other side of it, for sure.
Yeah, amazing. Well, that's kind of the beauty of the entrepreneurial journey, is breaking some shit and figuring out what worked and what didn't. I think that's it. Yeah, if you can sort of fail fast and fail early, you sort of get used to how. You ideally don't want to, but you sort of get used to it, and then you build that capacity, right? And you sort of get less overwhelmed as you go forward, and you can start to find the lessons and sort of turn the shit into shingles, as we say. So it becomes easier to kind of move yourself forward when you do experience those sort of dips. You can go, right, I've been through this before, now I've got a greater capacity to deal with it. Important part of the journey. So why was it systems and process? Was that just a lifelong passion? Was that just something you found in your business? In agency, was something that you were really great at, or how did that aspect come about?
I think it was born out of necessity. Honestly, it ended up being something where if I had more, I was sitting there with 15-hour days stacked back to back to back. And if I wanted any light at the end of the tunnel, it was about delegating. And in order to delegate effectively, it's building out the right systems and, getting stuff off your plate in a way that's repeatable and predictable. So that was, it was not a skill set that I had developed over, my agency life. I had been working in agencies that had some really great systems and processes. So I just emulated what they did and then applied it to our own business. But that was something where since I had a sort of a shortcut, or, I had some good examples, I was able to do it really effectively. And now I work with other agency partners. I work with our clients. We have another business, and we're connected with agencies all over the place, and we help just basically build systems into their businesses and build systems into their agency. I've got good friends who run agencies, and we've these guys, one in particular, he's been in business for 12 years. And then just in the last year, since we've connected, he started to scale his business because he's been able to actually delegate some of that stuff. It's one of those things where once you have the opportunity and once you have those systems in place, the sky's the limit. Once you really know how to get stuff off of your plate and onto other people's, you can focus on those priority tasks and on those things that really move you forward. So when I saw that in our business, it was kind of you got a little, the first hit of the drug, so to speak. You get like, oh wow, I got hours back because I handed off this stuff to this person. And so I just kept, I took it and ran with it. And that was one of those things where, because it was so, like, the reward was almost, immediate, I just kept going with it. So
yeah. So take us through that. What is, from an agency perspective, but specifically from agency, what is the uplift? What's the uptick of having better systems? Why? Obviously, we know that we want systems, but why do I want to get them? You talk about buying time back, buying energy back. What's the sell? Why do I want better systems? Why do I want to start to delegate and defer stuff out of my hands? What's the big?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And honestly, what it ends up being is just predictability. Like when you have the systems in place, because oftentimes the systems are there, they're just in the agency owner's head, or they're written down on a napkin somewhere. But when you actually build them out and you bring in people to execute those systems and you teach them those systems, it means that you can have a predictable way to execute at scale. It means that as you bring in clients, it's not like, oh shit, something else is broken and we got to go patch it up. It's like, okay, I can count on this system to take care of whatever that is, executing whatever that process is. And basically what it ends up being is like, you've got a reliable way of having other people do the vast majority of the work for the agency. And you don't have to worry about whether or not it's going to get done correctly. It's because it's already documented. It's already broken down. It's already, it's been executed time and time again, the same way, same over. And granted, there's optimizations to make to any system, but I think that what it ends up being is it just removes you further and further from the day to day, and then has you working on the either, big picture things, or growing the business, or establishing a work-life balance that actually makes sense, where you're not working from morning to night, and or on weekends, or all of the above. So
yeah,
that was my main motivation, to be honest. I have two little ones. I saw myself at my computer, at my desk for way too long, way too long, and I just needed to get out and spend more time with them. And I ended up in a position where, like, the agency right now, I barely have to work in it. We've got people who have basically replaced me in sales and strategy and all of the above, and all of the day-to-day execution. And so I've gone off and I've started another company. And granted, there's some startup growing pains in that business too that's taking up some of my time. But with the right systems, everything's starting to fall in place, where each activity that you do on a day-to-day basis starts getting handed off to another person, and you free up more and more of your time.
Yeah, so it's really about freedom, right? You're getting that time freedom back, you're getting that energy freedom, and like I said, now you've actually got so much time that you can start to do another business on the side. That's buying back a lot of time, and really it's that you're shifting from kind of that solopreneur, even entrepreneur, to business owner. It's a business that functions. If you take a week off, the business still runs. You don't have to be there to run it, which I think is a case for a lot of agency owners. We sort of build ourselves into this prison of just a shitty job that we run, where we take a day off and the business collapses. Indeed. So it's sort of the opposite. To get very, very granular on this, just to sort of drive the point home, take us through a day in the life before you had really good systems, and you sort of touched on that. But emotionally, what was the feeling of that kind of a day when you just didn't have the systems, the process? You were the pivot point in the business. You were the glue, the holding that machine together, versus today. What's the tangible kind of felt difference between those two ways of operating?
That's a good question, because I think that this is something that a lot of agency owners can relate to. Is like, you wake up in the morning, and rather than starting the day like in a sort of relaxed environment like you should, in the morning, sometimes it's nice to just kind of mellow out and set into the day kind of slowly. But instead you're like, oh God, my email inbox is full. Slack is just like overloading, bursting at the seams with messages. I've got all of these Asana projects assigned to me that I need to review. I've got all of these things that are behind, in red. I've got all these calls on my calendar. And it's just this constant state of overwhelm and feeling like you're behind, and that you've got, clients to support. And so I think that what it ends up being, like, more often than not, is like, those of us who really enjoy marketing, I love marketing because it's this constant evolution. Like, you're always learning something new because the industry is changing so rapidly. But for those of us who really enjoyed marketing and enjoy all the results that we bring for our clients and that kind of thing, it started to eat away at that joy and actually make you kind of dread your job, you know, and dread your business. And that, or at least for me, that's, I've talked to a lot of people in a similar position and have said similar things. But for me, it was like, I woke up in the morning, like, I don't want to do this anymore, you know, in some cases. And so that was the feeling. It was like never being able to catch up, never feeling like I wanted to do the work, even though I liked a lot of the stuff I was doing. I was just like, I was forcing myself through it. So that was one of the things that really started to shift. As I handed more off, I could say, cool, so we're going to do, you know, projects X, Y, and Z today, but X and Y I'm going to hand off to these people, and I'm going to take care of Z because it's the one that really needs me. Like I started bringing in people to do that. And honestly, the lighter load, like being able to kind of cherry pick the stuff that really needs your attention. Either it's the stuff you like to do or the stuff that you know, that really requires your expertise. You know, if you're the strategist in your business, you might have to do all the strategy stuff, but hand off a lot of the day-to-day execution, you know, that kind of stuff. So it just allows you to play the part that you want to play and really be the business owner, be the person that leads the show, you know, conducts the chorus, however you want to say it. It allows you to do the job that a business owner is supposed to do versus just having to do every little thing, you know?
Yeah, that's the classic. The sort of the dream is to work on the business and not in the business. And for some, it's this perpetual chasing of I'd love to work on the business. I'd love to be doing the strategy, but I just can't because I'm sort of in the weeds, right? Stuck in the weeds in the back end of the business, having to do the execution, having to do the fulfillment. And then you finish doing all of that, and then you got to do the accounts, and you got to top up the coffee machine and clean the toilets and do all of the stuff, right? You're the person that you're doing all of the stuff. You've not just got to run the business. You've then got all these other responsibilities outside of just your role as the stuff. They said the stuff you like to do is the coder, the designer, the developer, the creative, whatever that craft that you'd like to do. You've got to do all of the other stuff. So it gets it's not just the job you have to do. It's all of the other business stuff and the stuff that sort of comes with business that, to be honest, like most of us aren't great at the finances and the tax and the accounting and that side of things. So it's super important to start to buy back, to start to leverage, right? We're starting to leverage every day. We're getting more leveraged in every hour that we're doing something in the agency. If we've got 26 people, now we've got 26 activity going on rather than just 1 hour of productivity when it's one of you.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's one thing that also, like, you hit on something where a lot of entrepreneurs in general, you know, agency owners or just most of our clients, like, they get into business and they don't think about all the other stuff that comes along with running a business, because the accounting has to get done, the toilet cleaning has to get done, the HR stuff has to get done. But when you think about starting your business, you think about, like, hey, I'm just going to go market all day. I'm going to go just kill it for my clients all day. And then you don't think about all the other stuff, and it takes up a lot of time. So, like, that's, you know, those are systems as well. You can build out systems so that you're not doing the HR, the accounting stuff. You know, you can, like, we've started with a lot of sort of offshore, you know, cheap labor, like VAs and offshore Filipino accountant or bookkeepers and stuff like that. You know, just, it doesn't cost a lot, and they're happy to have it. They're great. You know, you got to find the right people, but it doesn't take, you know, you don't have to start with $25 an hour employees. You can start with a little low-level stuff, because that's the stuff that really oftentimes has the most impact. It frees you up. You know, if you can get back an hour or two a day, that's huge. So
yeah, it's massive. Over a week, over a month, over a year, a couple hours here or there a day, and getting more and more leveraged in those times. Yeah, and you talk about that 25 hour an hour. So if we're the $1,000, if, you know, for our headcount as the owner, we should be doing the $1,000 an hour tasks, right? That's where we should be focused in our business. Not doing, we can pay someone to do the $25 an hour ones. But can be obviously there's time and place where you've got to have revenue and you've got to have the profits to be able to do that kind of thing. But yeah, so it's more that mental shift of, well, what am I actually worth? Where's my value in my business? And identifying those. Should I actually, if I did, what task could I do today that would make everything else redundant or irrelevant? Let me do those tasks every single day, and everything else really should be either eliminated, deferred, delegated, or deleted.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And honestly, like you said, like that delegation ladder is, it doesn't necessarily, there's no ceiling to it. You can start with, paying somebody $5 an hour in the Philippines to do some bookkeeping for you and get that stuff off your plate. And then you can work your way up. Like we have people that were paying over $100 an hour for certain things. And our teams are all like on demand, for the most part. A lot of them are either mostly full-time or full-time, but they, some of these really expensive resources, like we're still delegating even like strategic components, consulting components, things like that out to people so that we don't I don't have to do that. I don't have to spend time in the client engagement, developing strategy or supporting the team when they need that level of help, unless it's something that I really want to be doing or something that I have a direct expertise in. So it's like you can do that at all levels of the business. It doesn't stop just you can start with something really, really small and train one VA to do 10 or 20 hours worth of work each week, and then just scale it to the point where you've got everything basically being passed off, and you're just making sure that the machine is like all the moving pieces are there.
Yeah. So for me as a business owner, if I want to start to implement some of these systems and start to delegate, what do I need to know? Like where do I start? What do I need to understand about my business? So do I need to know value, like anything that's below $500 an hour? That's something that I delegate. Do I need to really understand my financials and my margins and all that stuff to start doing this? Understanding all of the tasks in my business, have a full list of here's everything that needs to get done every single day. Where do I start, and where do you come in and sort of help from that first part of what do I actually have to systemize?
I think that's a really good question. I think that's the most important factor, typically, because it's the one that people may pay the most attention to naturally, is going to be the economics of their business, like whether or not they have the margins to cover, cover additional help. Because if they have to delegate something, it's going to cost, no matter where, how high level that is or how low cost that is, it's going to cost them something. So, if their margins can't cover delegation, then you need to look at your, the economics of your offer in general. Because I know plenty of people who are just charging enough to get by, and it's just oftentimes doesn't, it's never going to let them scale. So you have to build in margins that allow you to pay other people to do the work. So that's the first piece. And the other thing I think is just having something where, like I was saying, there's, it's predictable. If you do a million different things for a million different people and it's never the same, you're never going to be able to delegate it, or never going to be able to delegate it effectively. You're never going to be able to really build the systems that allow other people to do it. Yes, you can find highly paid people that can come in and do those things and just kind of like, be dynamic and change on a dime and get stuff done the way that the client needs it done. But really, I think it's establishing predictability in your offering. Like we do X, Y, and Z for this one group of people, or the narrower you can define that offer, the better it's going to be for scaling it, because you're basically doing the same thing over and over and over. It's not always easy to turn away money and turn away clients, but in the long run, it saves you a lot of money, saves you a lot of time, and it saves you a lot of headache, because it'll keep you. That's the kind of stuff that'll keep you from scaling. That'll keep you from bringing in, from stepping out of your business, basically.
Yeah, very, very, very hard to productize and systemize and have a consistent delivery around when every single client is in a different industry or it's a different delivery and everything is custom. That is easier to do when you are a McCann, a Clemenger, you're a big global, a massive agency where you've got 30, 40, 50, $100 million budgets to play with.
Right.
You've got scale and capacity. There's enough cash in the business to allow that to be a bit freer. But when you're charging $2,500, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 for a service a month, you've got to be much tighter with It's much harder to be fully integrated and have completely customized. Offering every time a customer comes in, and exactly like you're saying, very, very difficult to create that predictability, which is going to come back to the financials, right? I say, well, if I want to hit this target, I know I need exactly 5 clients at 20 grand a month. There's my 100 grand a month. I'm good. Rather than going 100, like, what does that target look like? I don't even know how many customers that is. What are we selling? Very, very hard to make that predictable.
Right.
So once I have that, what's the next day? How do I start to build a system? How do I start to work out what does that sort of look like practically and tangibly? What is it? We sort of talk about systems, and we go, great, I want a system, but what actually is a system? How do I start to build and systemize my processes?
That's a good question, because all the systems are kind of different to everybody you ask the question to, right? I mean, you've got a lot of different answers to that question, but to me, it's just anything that's going to allow you to execute predictably. It's gonna be different for each person, but for each business. It's not going to look the same. Your systems are probably going to be different to every other agencies out there, at least in some nuance. But to me, it's anything that's going to allow you to execute it predictably and hand it off predictably. So to me, that's where it comes in, like that coming into play. That's where that productized offering comes into play, like making sure that you really understand what you're doing, how it's going to be done, what it's going to look like from onboarding to termination of the project, whatever that looks like, or ongoing management of the project. And then it doesn't have to be that you have an SOP for every one of those steps. It's good to have an SOP. It's good to have a template to delegate all of those different things, but at least to establish some sort of step-by-step process. You don't have to start, like I said, you don't have to start with the documentation, but start with the process. Start by doing it the same way each time. It'll evolve over time, potentially, as you have ways that you see that you can optimize that process. But your system is going to be something that just requires that level of predictability. And I think that when it comes down to it, it can be as simple as writing out all the steps, building them into your project management system, whatever that might be, and having each of those be a task, and having each of those tasks either have a short description in them about the micro tasks that go within them. You can have a video of you just doing it. That one of the things that we work with our clients on is like, just, you don't have to build out the real formal SOPs. Just walk yourself through it. Jump on a screen record, do the task, talk yourself through it as if you're trying to explain it to somebody who's sitting there watching over your shoulder. And then you've got basically a video SOP. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be as easy, but it's going to give you something so that next time you do that, next time you need that thing done, you can bring somebody in and they can more or less do it the way that you need it done. They might ask you questions about it. They may have some point where they get stuck, and then they come to you and say, hey, what do I do here? But at least you're not responsible for doing the entire thing. Like that's my thing. It's like,
nice.
At least it's not up to you completely. You can start to walk people through it, get them unstuck. If you see something where they get stuck, build a little bridge there and make sure that they get over it the next time. But yeah, I mean, start taking stuff off your plate as simply as you can. And that's one of the best ways I've found to do it, is just, give them the assets they need, whatever it is, accounts access, give them the, whatever the tangible asset might be. And then just record your way through it, record an example, and then ask them to do it the next time for the next client or the next project or whatever it is,
Yeah, I like that approach. You just jump on, shoot a quick Loom video or something like that, and just go. If I was going to teach this to somebody and actually just step through the process, I think it's a really nice way, rather than having to. It can be quite scary sitting down, looking at a blank page and thinking, right, what's step one? Okay, yeah. And actually, typing something out or writing something out or diagramming something out, that can be.
And that's all good stuff. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that in the future, as you scale, investing more time, like you as the business owner, investing more time in those activities is well worth it. Like, the ROI is there for sure. But in the beginning, like, I mean, one of the things that we work with is like people who have done a mishmash of like a little bit of delegation of this, a little bit of delegation of that. They've never really been able to build those systems so that every time they do this thing, it's not on their plate. And that's really that's the cornerstone, is like set it up so that you've got one thing that you never have to touch again, and then you have two things that you never have to touch again, and then three that you never have to touch again, and just build on that. Build that list. It doesn't have to be like it's almost as like productizing your for fulfillment, like you're productizing your delegation. You're basically saying, okay, I built out this little micro system for this piece. Never going to touch that again because I got this person who knows how to do it, and I've got all the everything they need to do it.
Yeah, I love that step-by-step, a systematic approach to systems, because it can feel when you think, oh, shit, I've got to systemize my business, right? That's a lot of work. I've got all these systems. I don't even know where to start. Removing that friction from that process, they just do one thing. Shoot a video about how you answer the phone call, right? When a client calls, how do you answer a phone call? Write up a quick script. That's one thing, and now that's handed off. And then what's the next thing? Okay, here's something else I do every day, and like that sort of step by step, and just get one thing done at a time. But over a year, over 6 months, over whatever time it takes, you can step by step. You look back, and that time's going to pass anyway. So dedicate half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour to getting something systemized every day over time. Yeah, like that approach. I love the frictionless approach of that. Just get something quickly done as well. And saying, rather than sitting down and having to write a full schematic on day one, I can just shoot a quick video, screen recording myself, which a lot of us are quite used to doing these days anyway. It's a quick, frictionless way. At least there's something, and then you can build on and adapt that over time. I like that approach.
Exactly. And and it's one of those things where you got to just look at the return, the long-term return on investment. It may cost you a little bit more, like, rather than sitting down and doing the task itself, just figuring out how to hand it off may cost you a little bit more time, or a little bit more money because you're paying somebody else to do it. But the fact is that you're never going to be able to scale. You're never going to be able to step back from any of it if you don't invest the time early on. And so the long-term return is exponential. It really is. Like, once you hand that one thing off, you never have to do that again. Basically, that's I keep reinforcing that point, but like, it's something that is critically important here for people to understand. It's like, rather than focusing on just getting it done. And my least favorite statement is like, oh, I'll just do it. Like, oh, would it taken me the same amount of time to just do it? Yeah, it would have. But then what happens the next time? That if the next time you could have just handed it off versus just doing it, then that's my point that I'm trying to make.
Is that massive opportunity cost in that? And that when you do that one time, it never just takes 5 minutes. It never just takes, I'll just do that quickly, because number one, it never just takes the time that you think. It's still going to be a 30-minute task if that's what it takes. That's number one, 30 minutes of your time doing that. But that's also a lost opportunity of 30 minutes of sales calls you could have been making, or 30 minutes of just clear space, 30 minutes of taking a break and having time and space for creativity to come to flourish, right? If you can buy a couple hours back a day, whether that's a couple of hours now, I can knock off at 3 o'clock and go home and spend those hours with my family, or go surfing, or do something outside of work that I love to do. Suddenly that compounding over time, life becomes more enjoyable. You start to get fun back at work. You start to, as you're saying at the start, the opposite of going, oh shit, I got so much to do today. Work just isn't fun anymore. You start to buy back those little pieces of time. You do more of the work that you love, or just to take a break and buy back some life. It starts to shift, like the energy in your business, how you feel, how you show up. Massive. If you can start to buy back just little bits over time, and that compounds just in energy and positivity and optimism and sort of all these side effects. That's from just having more time and more freedom and more space.
That's funny. That those words are thrown around a lot in my circles to describe the way that I operate. Like when my agency partners give me a hard time, sometimes they say, your optimism makes me sick, or your energy makes me sick. Because like they're sitting there grinding, and I'm like, dude, it'll be cool. It'll be all right. Like whatever it is, because I have that like you said, that time gives you a renewed sense of like vitality in the business and vitality in, your day to day, just in your life. And so, like you said, just being able to go surfing makes marketing more fun, makes jumping on client calls more fun, makes doing your accounting, makes cleaning the toilets more fun, because you know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Even if it's a shitty day, you've still got less of that shitty day ahead of you,
100%. Very, very underrated. You said that those that are out there hustling, 24/7 being the candle, it's just not a great way to operate, but it's kind of in built-in entrepreneurship in what we think we need to be doing. So appreciate the space that you're coming from and that perspective that you're bringing of let's delegate, let's buy back some of that time, buy back some clarity, and make work fun again. Yeah, love that idea. That's what we want, right? That's why we started the businesses in the first place, because we thought it would be a fun ride, and when it ends up not being fun, it's time to rethink and get some stuff off your plate and start to buy back some mental freedom, some physical freedom, and probably make more money, right? That's the sort of the other kind of weird uptick that happens when you start to do less. Business grows, and so maybe it's got to do with that free energy, right? You're showing up more optimistically, your demeanor changes, your character starts to shift, right? You start to come at your clients from a different place. So there's a tendency that business does better off the back of actually doing less and doing less work and enjoying yourself.
Yeah, honestly, man, I fall victim to that sort of that trap, like where in order to grow, in order to accomplish a goal, you just have to do. And like, I have to do these 12 or 15 hour days to get shit done and make it happen. But you're absolutely right. If I look back, historically speaking, at all of the times where I've experienced the most exponential growth, the most rapid growth, or the most, rapid personal development, even, it's when I'm not so attached to that outcome, when I'm not so attached to the process. It's just, when you're able to actually step back and enjoy it a bit more. And, sometimes that allows you to, free up some mental capacity or some visionary capacity. Like, hey, what if I did this with my business? What if I see this? I finally can step back and say, you know what, my business is broken. Like, I've been in my business, like working, like grinding for so long that I didn't see that this big, huge element of my business is broken and I need to fix it. And I've actually had multiple experiences, but with just, people are in my circles lately where they've had that experience. They've had, one of them has been doing something for almost a decade, and, that was their business model. They were, just to give you a specific, lead gen was their business model. They do outbound lead gen, and he was able recently to, get a lot off his plate and then evaluate his business and say, you know what, based on who I am and my priorities, my business is broken. That's not what I want to be doing, that kind of stuff. So it's, we can get all philosophic here, but the free time, the clear, renewed mental state is, it's massive. Yeah.
It's again, massively underrated. And that clarity, that confidence, that state of calm that comes from that can, there's a weird felt sense in busyness and rushing and pushing where we feel like we're being really productive and we're getting shit done and we're hustling. But it's actually very, very different when you stop and you step back and you can actually see the wood for the trees. When you're stuck in the weeds, it's very, very difficult to see, the forest. But when you step back and you've got that 40,000 foot and some cognitive space just to go, actually, who am I in this business, and what are my values? Where am I going? Why am I doing this even? What do I want this to be? That conversation is very, very difficult to have when you're just pounding work out and stuck in doing all of the stuff. So exactly what you're just saying, very, very valuable to actually just have that moment to kind of connect back with yourself and assess the business and go, is it aligned to my values? Is it actually taking me where? What do I actually want out of life? What's my vision? What's my purpose? Where am I going? And is this business, the way it's formatted, going to get me to that goal? And that doesn't happen when you're in the woods. You got to step back. So well put, man. I think that's a massive point.
Yeah, and I've seen it happen so many times. And one of the other things that you have to consider is like, you've got this sunk cost fallacy in your business almost. Like, this is what I built. This is where I need to. I've already invested this much in this, and when you're grinding every day, it's easy to maintain that belief. When you step back a little bit, it's easier to really evaluate, like you said, whether or not this is aligned with who you are. So,
yeah, love it. Very, very, very important stuff. Love this conversation. A lot of insight for the people viewing and listening at home, particularly agency owners. And this is a massive place for us as agency owners to really get this stuff and start to implement it, because it does make a massive difference. And I hope that you guys listening have got a really good felt sense of what the distinction and what the difference looks like from hustling, grinding, panting it out to slowing down, taking a break, assessing, and coming from that place of actually that more strategic working on the business. Nick, been amazing, mate. If people want to connect with you, find out more about you, get some systems baked into their businesses, whether they're a business or an agency, where's the best place for them to come and connect with you?
Honestly, I really like personal relationships. So if you connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn and shoot me a message, I think that's always a really good starting point. I would love that. I mean, if you guys can jump on, I don't know, Chris, if you're going to have access to my social profiles in a place where these guys can get to.
I'll drop all those links in the show notes.
Yeah, I think that would be ideal, because I'm a human to human kind of guy. So chatting about this stuff, we have offerings and we have things where we help people. But more often than not, I'm handing stuff off, handing out templates and videos and documentation and just advice and just helping people out just because that's what I like to do. So, sometimes I like working with people, and sometimes I just like pointing them in the right direction, So shoot me a message, guys. I'd be happy to chat with you.
Awesome. And I'll drop all of those links in the show notes. Guys watching, pound one of those links and go get connected with Nick and get this super, super important stuff baked into your natural operating rhythm. Get back control of your business, buy back some freedom, start to enjoy things again. If things have been becoming a bit too overwhelming, a bit too stressful, step back, get some system in defeat and start to enjoy things. Nick, thank you so much for dropping by, mate. It's been awesome. Really enjoyed the chat. Appreciate the time.
Likewise, Chris. Thanks so much.
Pleasure. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.